Hello and welcome to all you lovely people. So this trip to Mauritius has some amazing and not so amazing things contained within, so do be prepared. And considering this trip was 18 months ago, those reasons are actually why I've kept putting off making a full Suitcase Monkey video for this trip, despite the fact that the country itself is and was a lovely place to escape for the winter. So if you can't already tell, I'll be trying something a little different to share this trip with you. This is a part scripted, part off-the-cuff musings kind of video. So I do hope you enjoy it, and if you don't, there's not really much I can do about it at this stage. If you haven't already noticed, this is not Suitcase Monkey, this is Carry On Monkey, a complimentary channel where I can play around with things a little bit more, so please do subscribe if you are new here. So this holiday was actually our first long-haul trip after the height of COVID. So let me take you back to November 2021, if you'll let me. It was a time of COVID testing before you travelled anywhere. We had to take a test as soon as we arrived at the hotel, fill in the forms, all that kind of stuff. So at the time it was all completely normal, but considering we're now less than 2 years removed from that normality, it's kind of hard to believe that it ever actually happened so recently and already feels like another world. For those that don't know Mauritius, it's an island east of Madagascar in Africa, although it really has a great blend of African, European and South Asian. For example, all of the country's laws are written in English, but French is more commonly spoken as you're passing by, but the mother tongue is a mixture of French and African, a kind of Mauritian Creole. It's a 12-hour direct flight from London, and we mainly booked it just to get some much-missed consistent sunshine. Although at the time that I'm saying this now, in 2023, London's basically had Mauritius weather for about 7 weeks in a row now, so I probably should have just waited, I guess. The holiday would mostly be split into 2 parts. It would be half in the hotel just relaxing, and the other half would be doing excursion days around the island. We'd booked a hotel on an all-inclusive basis on the west coast, about an hour's drive from the airport. The hotel was advertised as a 4-star hotel, and we'd paid for a 4-star hotel, but to be honest, this was definitely the weakest part of the trip, with it being kind of a 3-star experience overall, but then with some extra points knocked off for various reasons that I'll get into. Nothing was terrible or really bad that totally interrupted the enjoyment of our holiday, but it just wasn't everything that we were kind of hoping for. Dirty glasses would be frequently left out around the pool like all day, usually from the evening, the night before, and then they just sit there and you just kind of felt a little bit untidy as you were in the area sometimes. There wasn't enough lounges for the number of guests that were staying there, despite there being loads of empty space, and the food was mostly good but never great. The room itself was nice, had a good view of the sea, but it was one of those that had the adjoining room where you can just walk directly into the next room, but the lock never worked the entire week that we were there, so you could just walk into next door. Despite the fact that we told reception 4 times, nothing ever happened. The service was also like really slow. Sometimes it would be 10 to 15 minutes before you could get someone's attention at a table, and then a similar time to get the thing that you actually ordered. When checking in, we're normally kind of more than happy to carry our own bags to the room without having someone to have to carry them for us. My logic is always kind of like, I've carried them for 6,000 miles. I don't need you to help me with the last 60 feet. But I know tipping, it's like a thing. So we gave in and agreed that we'd be happy for someone to have someone carry the bags to our room. But then when we got to the room, we had to wait about an hour until someone actually carried the bags to the room, and we needed stuff that was in the case. So that was just kind of a good welcome to what we were about to experience, I guess. But despite all of that, during the 4 days that we were at the hotel, like it was nice to just chill out and be in another country. But yeah, it sort of took the shine off a little bit. So this is where I kind of would normally mention about that the hotel is linked below and encourage you to book that hotel. Well, I don't want to name and shame the hotel sort of here, but I'll still link it below so you can avoid it. But the main reason is if you are looking at Mauritius, the beach that we were staying on is a good spot overall, and there were loads of other hotels along the same beach that I'd suggest you look at if ever that's a place you might be thinking of going. The west coast isn't as breezy, and so it's calmer waters, and it's kind of nicely in the middle of the island, so for excursions and stuff like what we did, everything is kind of equidistant. There's no like really long travel because you're sort of in the middle of everything. Also, I guess I should say maybe some of these issues with the hotel might not be issues anymore. Mauritius had just opened back to tourism like a month before we got there. So maybe everyone who was working there maybe was still finding their feet. So that's the only kind of glimmer of hope that I can maybe offer you. But as I say, Mauritius itself was lovely. We booked 3 different excursion days, which was probably the best 3 days that we had, although not so much on one of them for Chiaki, but we will get into that. The first was around the south of the island, and it was the shortest of the excursions that we did, but it offered a great taste of what the country had to offer. This waterfall is 272 feet high and is probably the longest that I've seen personally, but our favourite area was the next stop, which was the 7 coloured earths. This is an occurrence that's brought on by a combination of iron, aluminium and lava mixing over centuries, and that combination creates 7 different colours within the earth itself. And then after taking that all in for about an hour or so, we ended with a really nice lunch and some amazing panoramic views. Our second excursion day was towards the north of the island. First of all, we stopped off for a couple of hours in the capital of Port Louis. The waterfront here is really nice and the most picturesque part of the city, and of course we found the cafe with the nicest coffee and selection of sweets on offer. The city is famous for its markets in the centre. There was a prepared cooking food section, but that was actually the only kind of part of the holiday where we felt a little bit hounded in terms of being asked to buy stuff all the time, so we kind of rushed through there a little and I didn't get much chance to do much filming done, apart from this photo. There were 2 main things that we learned on this trip though. One is that rum is very much the drink of the island, so we somehow ended up at this rum shop, you know when your tour guide takes you to a place that you didn't ask to actually go to. Problem is we aren't really rum people, so it kind of went down a little bit like a lead balloon with the salesperson there. We did, however, buy some local tea here as we discovered a taste for this vanilla blend that we drank back at the hotel and really enjoyed. The second thing that we learnt is that Mauritius is the home of the dodo bird. Now, Mauritius was the only country to ever have the dodo bird, and we had no idea of this until we noticed that every single place that we visited had a dodo bird somewhere attached to it. So it was kind of interesting to realise that the world's most famous extinct animal had its only history right here, never having left the island. One of my favourite things that we did the whole trip was going to this botanical garden, which by this point is just something we have to do when abroad. This was like, if you've been to Kew Gardens, it was like that area, except obviously there's no glass surrounding you and everything is a massive tropical plant, and the whole area was a really cool environment. And then on our last day we went on a boat trip visiting a bunch of small islands off the east coast of Mauritius. Now, for me, this probably was my favourite day. However, for Chiaki, this was definitely her worst day. The reason being that Chiaki kind of suffers from motion sickness and can get seasick, but sometimes she's okay on a boat and, sometimes she isn't. A number of people were asking why Chiaki wasn't on the recent Alaska Princess cruise, and the main reason is that she just couldn't get away from work at the time that the trip was happening. But she was also concerned about the possibility of being seasick the whole time, so it just sort of didn't happen. During when we were in Mykonos, Chiaki was totally fine on the boat that we took there, so after that we thought, well, let's try and see how we're doing again here. This was not a good idea in hindsight. There was just us on the boat and one other group on board who were our age and a little bit above. But the vibe of this boat trip wasn't quite the tranquil transport that we thought it might be, focusing more on high-speed donuts, hitting high waves at an angle, and this was definitely not to Chiaki's enjoyment. We had a similar thing actually again in St. Lucia, and I'm just not quite sure why boat trip always has to equal crazy party time and can't just be a boat trip. I don't know. But despite that, we got to do some snorkeling first of all, which was okay. I've done about 30 scuba dives in my life, mostly in Thailand, and either things were just better in Thailand, or with 11 years passing since then, coral truly is dead everywhere. So it was hardly the colourful coral experience that I remember back in 2009. But we got to visit a bunch of really cool spots along the way, and even saw some dolphins swimming, by which was a massive surprise, as well as enjoying some musical classics, of course at high speeds. Lunch itself was my personal highlight, as it was on a relatively quiet, idyllic beach with really, really good food.
Lobster and dorado fish.
Now, the one thing that had been happening during this whole day thus far was the unlimited rum that was being provided to us, and in the hot weather, it was very, very refreshing. But the boatman would of course regularly fill up your glasses even if you didn't want it, which is why in some of the shots you may notice here, the camera work is not quite as professional as you might be used to. So that was our holiday to Mauritius, and like I said, we still had a great time as it was lovely to get away, especially after COVID. Next up, we'll be going to Porto, Portugal in July, which I'm really looking forward to since we loved Lisbon and Madeira so much. After that, I'll be heading to Morocco with currently 10 Suitcase Monkey subscribers, which I just can't wait for. It's super close now coming up. The closing date to make a booking to join us, if you want to join us on that trip, is the 4th of August. So I'll link the details below if you're only just hearing about it now and potentially want to check out the details. Then after that, although not booked, you can most likely expect a couple more European long weekend videos. Then towards the end of the year, there is the slightly life-changing, at least for a while, thing that we're probably going to be doing, which I alluded to in the Greenwich video, and I'll give you more info kind of when it's starting, if it happens, which hopefully it will. I'm not sure how many of these carry-on monkeys I'll be doing. It kind of mostly depends on what else is going on with Suitcase Monkey and kind of when I have an opening and an idea of something to make. This is, I think, the 7th video now on the channel, so do take a look if you haven't seen any of the others. I've got a Christmas in London video, how I edit my videos, a UK seaside trip, a Greenwich walk, a canal walk, so please do go check those out. As ever, thank you for watching, and yeah, thanks for watching Carry On Monkey. I'll catch you in the next one.